Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. First, I want to thank my colleagues for what was a very, very engaging discussion, and I hope that it was facilitated with a great degree of patience and transparency and respect. But I would like to start my comments out by saying that if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. And I do understand that there may be some anxiety or some questions regarding anything that is new. Before we had some of the technological and telephonic, quite frankly, resources we did have, in fact, role models in the persons of Dr. Dorothy Bendross Mendengal, who showed us what it was like to hit the pavement. Why am I saying that? During that particular time, we didn't have Connect Ed. We didn't have robocalls. As principals, that was a very new concept. We had to have individuals, human capital, with a list, making phone calls, checking them out. So when we transitioned into robocalls and Connect Ed, that was new. I juxtapose that because when we're talking about this particular issue, which I'm no expert on, but I do understand what it represents. It represents AI. What is that? That's artificial intelligence. That's some technology that's proprietary in some regards, and obviously it is something that is new. During the pandemic, we learned a whole lot regarding what it is to disengage, what it is to engage, and how do we go about that particular process. We all became experts in Zoom, which is something that all of us had to transition to. We had our challenges with some of the technology approaches in this district alone, which actually shuttered some learning opportunities for students. And we had to go through those particular learning exercises. There's been some inquiries relative to the ESSER funds. I want to say for the record, the ESSER funds are time certain. They're time certain. So when we contemplate some level of punning and transitioning, and many of these are categorical. So the recommendations around human capital, great recommendation. There is no substitute for human capital. But human capital, as previously stipulated, does not align with non-recurring revenue. So if you engage human capital, you can't sustain that over the next 2 years when the window sunsets around ESSER funds. I also recall some contemplation and conversation relative to us racing toward the expenditure of those funds. If you don't spend them, you lose them. This district and this board has been very, very adamant around issues of recruitment and enrollment, and has taken some significant steps relative to creating positions, creating departments. And I know there was an inquiry relative to Ms. Pauline's involvement in this particular process, but as the superintendent somewhat qualified it, this process began before Ms. Pauline's position even existed. So that kind of answers that question. So she could not have been engaged because that position didn't exist, and that department didn't exist, and that priority didn't exist at the particular time. I don't want it to be lost relative to what the superintendent indicated regarding a 1,400 increase in student population. That translates to north of $10 million. $10 million in additional revenue if you look at the minimal amount of per student allocation. So we are making headway, we are moving along. I'm not privy to this particular company. I'm not privy to the nuances in terms of the fact finding, but what I do know is that we're governed by a process that appears to have taken place in this particular district, a process that was known to this board. What does that process look like? That process is an RFP. You put out an RFP, people have an opportunity to apply. We get respondents, they go through a process. They go through an interview. They go through a presentation. They go through presenting their resumes. They go through an opportunity for staff to vet, confirm, determine the veracity of what they're representing. They go through that particular process. And in this particular case, it appears, unless I'm hearing something different, that this firm did go through that particular process. Whether or not they had a direct contract with a district or not, sometimes a subcontractor. In this particular district alone, we have contractors to this day that are building schools as prime contractors that started out as subcontractors. So at some point, you have to go through that particular process to get to where you are. But the process that the administration engaged in is not divorced from the process that the board can avail itself to. So the board avails itself to a process where the agenda is published, we have committee workshops, we have briefings, we have an opportunity to fully engage and discuss and clarify and answer and get all of the information. And staff has been pretty responsive when it comes to issues that are of concern. This kind of caught me off guard because during committee, this was not really an issue that appeared to have any concern. And I do appreciate the commentary and the deduction made by Board Member Santos when you explore the per pupil student allocation on something that is going to reclaim and recapture and engage. And I think it's being restricted, and I'm not here to defend the item. I'm not here, but I'm going to always defend the process, and a process that's fair and transparent and has gone through every levels for us to render a particular decision. So I think the district does have an opportunity in a particular window to evaluate. I think our chief financial officer said there'll be a determination made within 12 to 16 months. This is new. This is not going to be, in my estimation, it is not going to be the panacea. I never heard anybody say that it's going to be the panacea, that this is going to be the solution. This is going to be part of a solution, and this is going to be a part of a solution, and this is going to be a part of a solution, and. So anytime we have an opportunity to explore something else in our toolbox that has been vetted by the professionals in this district, that obviously has been recommended by the superintendent, and that staff has indicated on the record that they've done, I wrote the word, their due diligence. I, as a board member, have done mine. I did have an opportunity. Dr. Perez kind of beat me to it. I beat you to it, actually. We might have went the same time. I looked on the website as well, but our process actually does not restrict it to what's on a website for a person to have made a determination relative to being awarded an agreement. So I have all of the information that I need to know to render a decision. I know there's been some contemplation about a deferral, but as my understanding of Robert Rules of Order, if you make a motion to defer, the item dies, and potentially the process may have to start all over again. So that's a tool that may or may not be in the toolbox to enhance retention, to enhance engagement, and to provide for some of the new strategies that we've challenged the district administration to explore. And now that exploration is brought forth prior to Dr. Dotra's being here, a recommendation for this particular solution. So I appreciate all of the conversations that were had. There's always, siempre, always an opportunity if things are not what they're supposed to be in a contract. There's a provision called termination for convenience. So if there's some representation of regarding performance that does not happen with a new company or a new product or a new solution, we have an opportunity, and we as board members have any opportunity to inquire about data and challenge. And again, I'm just a little vexed. It's been over an hour on this particular item, but I wanted the public to understand that we didn't just get this. There's a process by which we as board members can go through many of the discussions that you just served witness to regarding this particular item. And we have a right to have these discussions. So I want to be very clear about that. I'm not taking that away. But I want you all to know that there's a process on the administration side, and there's a process for vetting on the board side. So where you don't hear a board member as myself initially plan on speaking, I had a briefing, I had committee, and I had multiple opportunities to follow up. So at this particular time, I know there was a motion being contemplated, but at this particular time, if Madam Chair, you're back, if you don't have any questions or comments, I allowed everybody to speak if you wanted to speak on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Unfortunately, I was stepped out, so I didn't hear all of the conversation, but I know what the item is about. I also recall that there were no comments or questions that I remember at committee last week. So maybe I missed something, but I didn't remember. I don't remember that there was any issue about this E-142. Am I correct?
Correct, Madam Chair. That's exactly correct.
Okay.
So at this particular point, the item, there was a motion being contemplated. It wasn't formally made. But if that motion is still not here, I would like us to vote the item up or down, because a motion to deferral is actually a motion to vote it down. Because at the end of this meeting, a deferral of an item will terminate the item. So I just want us to be very clear that we can vote the item up or down, and if it dies, it's something that has to start over when we have an opportunity to address this issue based on the work that administration has put into that potentially could have clarified it. And Board Member Navarro, I will say, I do see some of the different articulations of it. It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. So we're saying two-way communication. Somebody described it as a chat box. Somebody decided as a social media. It's been described differently, but I understand what it is. But at this particular point, with my understanding and the understanding that board members have or do not have, I would like to make a motion on the item.
Call the question.
I'd like to move on the item.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of E-142?
Aye.
Aye.
No,
Okay. guess
no,
we have
and
that.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, through the chair, I would just like to say that I'm even more so knowing that we have realigned some departments and that our Chief Strategy Officer has not been engaged in that, and now she is responsible for the body of work of enrollment. Even more so, I would want to see a process or an award that includes that, because if the award says that you have to, it says to avoid loss of students, which is that exactly that body of work, and we're awarding a contract that does not include that, I feel that I am not doing my duty to vote the right way. So I stand on my principle.
Yes, ma'am.
On my no.
Okay, I guess I need a roll call vote, because it just went. Board Member Santos?
Aye.
Board Member Bias-Geller?
Aye.
Board Member Rojas? Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
Thank you. The item passes 7-2. Thank you. Madam Chair, I'll hand the gavel back over to you if you would like me to, or you want me to continue?
It's fine, I'm fine here. You can continue the next one.